Welcome to another episode of The Intersection. I'm Jessika Graham, partner at Weiss, Serota, Helfman, Cole & Bierman. Today I'm joined by two of my favorite people, power couple, and overall just amazing humans. Johanna and Juha Mikkola, a husband and wife team who co-founded Wyncode Academy, scaled it into one of South Florida's leading tech education platforms, and successfully exited the business in 2021. I actually met Joe on the first day of kindergarten for our boys, and at that point they had just exited. They now advise other co-founder couples through their firm, Mestari, on how to scale both the business and their partnerships. We're going to talk about what it really takes to build and sell a company as a couple, and what founders should understand long before they get to the exit. Joe and Juha, thank you so much for coming. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so excited. Two of my favorite people.
So excited to be here.
They're both the co-CEOs of EDH North America and Mestari co-founders, and they were co-founders of Wyncode. So let's kind of just jump into your background and what led you down to Miami to co-found Wyncode.
Fist pump. Good team.
It was a good team.
You take it away.
First of all, thanks for having us.
It's
great to be here. It's fun to think back on the Wyncode story. It's been 4 or 5 years since the company was acquired, but that was what brought us down to Miami. I'm originally from Finland, same with Joe. She can talk a little bit more about her background, but ended up in Florida as a kid from kindergarten to 4th grade. My family lived in the Palm Beach area, and I always loved this place. It always felt like home, and we left to move back when my parents thought that me and my brother were becoming too American. And they're like, hey, I gotta learn about your culture a little bit, and we gotta move to cold, depressing Finland. So we did that, but it always left this taste of like, gotta get back to Florida somehow. And Wyncode was that idea that got us down here. So we were living in Toronto at the time, and I ended up being at a coding school myself. I wanted to learn how to build, and the idea was to start a tech company. And as I was going through the program, I remember coming home every night and telling Joe how exciting it was. I'm like, this is crazy the things we're learning in this like 10-week condensed format. We should do something like this. Let's figure out somewhere to launch this. And since we had wanted to come down here, it was a huge risk. We didn't know anyone in the city. Maybe one person. We knew one person in the city, had never been down here. Tech was not a thing in Miami at all. Just decided, let's do it, make it happen.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you. What was the tech scene like down here in 2014? Because I think it was not happening. I mean, was eMerge around at that point in time yet, or no?
Yeah, so eMerge Americas, shout out to Melissa Medina and the amazing team there who have really been helping build the tech ecosystem here and helped us build what we were doing. They launched the same year that Wyncode launched. So our day one of the first day of classes at Wyncode was first day of eMerge ever, and they invited the students to eMerge. So I feel like our origin stories are a little bit connected. Looking forward to going there soon. But I think for us, why Florida? One, at the time, we were experiencing a huge demand in the need for technology skills, and we saw that everywhere. Juha just explained how he felt it firsthand as an entrepreneur that he needed to learn the tech skills to make his e-commerce business at the time more effective and more successful. So anyway, we saw this phenomenon happening all over North America. And we were like, where could we go where we could be first movers in the market? So really proud that we were the first in the Southeast to launch a coding bootcamp. Also the first to be licensed by a Department of Education. I think sometimes we talk about does Florida lead in these sort of things? What is it like to do business here? It was a really friendly environment to start a startup. We did run into some challenges being licensed in the early days. And we thought all the other players in this space, like in New York and San Francisco, that the ones that we looked up to, that they were already licensed. Turns out they weren't. We became the first. And actually that launched a few collaborations we did with the White House as well, because one, very vocationally focused. So this was all about turning adults, helping people pivot their profession into technology, high in demand skill set. We really wanted to put our flag in the sand in South Florida and show that you could both train and start a new technology career in a place that's very unlikely to do that in. And so at the time, I think you should tell the story of how we discovered that there was some investment happening in tech. I mean, it all stems from a Miami Herald article.
Yeah, I mean, really what we did, we knew nothing about the tech ecosystem at all. We realized that Wynwood was cool. Panther Coffee existed. So we're like,
I
let's
was gonna
go.
say, what I'm thinking about Wynwood in 2014. What
Yeah.
was
It was the
there?
kind of
Panther
place,
Coffee.
the first time we
that's
drove
kinda
down
it.
there, we had my mom's car, which like said Palm Beach on the plates, and we had
It
a
was
cop
robbed.
car drive behind us, pull us over and say like, what are you doing in this neighborhood? Do you need us to escort you out?
Yeah.
That's what it was like. And we're like, no, we're here for a reason. There's also only 3 places to eat. And the students in our first cohort, the only food that they ate was Hefe's taco truck that came like a couple times a week. Yeah, every Thursday. It was like when you didn't have to bring lunch. So yeah, it was a very different place. It's crazy how far things have come in like 10 to 15 years. But really what we did is we read the Herald, Refresh Miami, a couple of other tech kind of papers that were writing about the Miami tech scene. And back then, like we printed them and we like highlighted the name of every person that was mentioned. And we're like, let's go down and like meet with every one of these people and see what happens. And that's how we realized that, yes, it was super early, but there were a lot of people who cared a lot about this, that you could tell between the investments of the Knight Foundation, things happening with the Emerge Americas. Endeavor was already putting Miami on the roadmap. So there were a lot of cool things that showed like there's some real interest to make this happen. We didn't realize like the challenges that were there, but we could see that there were a lot of people who wanted to help. And I always remember we went on I think it was the day after Christmas, maybe, we came down to Wynwood. There was a tech meetup, Code for Miami. I think they were coding to make civic apps to like help the city. And we spoke with somebody there who ran the organization. We're like, what do you think of this idea to do a code school? And he's like, I actually think it's a really amazing idea. You guys should do it. And it was a big validation for us. We're like, oh, this guy's saying that there's a need for this.
He believes in us.
He believes in us. Years later, it turned out we hired him as our head instructor. And he told us, he's like, that night, I wasn't telling you guys the truth. I thought you were like every other Miami founder who's just throwing out an idea and you never follow through. So I was encouraging just because I thought I'd never see you again. And he's like, the fact you actually did it and made it successful, it's like blows my mind. I really want to be part of this. So it was one of my favorite stories and just showed the community in the early days. There was a lot of hype and not so much actually happening.
I mean, that's how Miami used to be. A lot of
Exactly.
hype.
Exactly.
And not a lot of things actually happening. I mean, everything has really transformed since 2021. I grew up here, I'm from here, and I left for college and for law school, but coming back, it's just such a transformation. But to have that vision in 2014, to come down here from Toronto, I know you don't have a tech background. What were you doing at that time?
Yeah, so I was in corporate management with the National Hockey League. Very, very different space to be in. The thing that I was experiencing at the time is we were actually building custom apps internally for NHL officiating because we needed a way to monitor a large employee base, the referees and the linesmen who are out in the field. You couldn't have a coach per referee and linesman because there were so many of them, so we leveraged technology. I was the youngest, most energetic on the team, and even though I did not come from a tech background, I jumped into this project. And so simultaneously, while Juha was seeing his business really needing technology skills, I was seeing it in a corporate setting come in, and that kind of gave us the conviction to be like, wow, everyone's really going to need these skills. We see it from startup to corporate, and that again was another ingredient, I would say, in addition to shout out to Ernie, who told us we should absolutely do this from Code for Miami. But our personal experience professionally also gave us kind of the confidence to come here and do it in a space that we didn't have a foundation of technology, because for us, we had so much conviction, and I still have a lot of conviction in the need for technology skills, that you would need it everywhere across every platform. And I mean, we're seeing huge disruption now with AI. I mean, the next wave now, the coding of today, is our ability to learn, work with, leverage AI as a tool. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. And I do also want to say our grads, even though I would say junior coding, we've seen huge disruption there. Our graduate base, we graduated over 1,000 people in the program over 8 years before it being acquired. The things they're doing now, because they have that technology foundation, is just really incredible. It's amazing to see what they're building out there.
Not to plug another podcast, but The Daily yesterday had a really good story about coders and working with AI, and how they're still working with AI. So that's really interesting. So when you guys came down here at the outset, did you ever envision that you were going to sell Wyncode, or did you think we're going to do this forever and this is what we're going to do?
I think that's a great question. I don't think we set out at all with that in mind. I think what we wanted to do was solve a problem. And I think that's what made the journey so fun in the early days, because it was crazy work. We showed up with zero network, with no idea what we were doing. We did have a little bit of mentors who helped us like in the space. And we also had crazy fortunate things happen. Like one of my favorite stories was we had one of Joe's friends works for Four Seasons, and we had bought these Four Seasons beds, and I had no idea in Toronto, I had no idea that Four Seasons beds are a thing. Like people want these things, right? I had never stayed at a Four Seasons.
NBA players stay at Four Seasons because they're extra long and
that's something else I didn't know about.
Yeah.
So we're moving, so I'm like, we got to sell these beds. So I list them. I can't remember what it was. It was pre-Facebook Marketplace, and someone calls me right away, like, you have a Four Seasons bed? Like we're coming to pick it up right away. Turns out she's a technology recruiter. We tell her what we're doing. She's like, oh, we have an office in Fort Lauderdale. Like, let me pull all the technology jobs that are open in the market, and let's see if it's a good market to launch. She pulls this entire report for us. We see all these Ruby on Rails jobs that are open. We see the companies that need them, and we're like, this is our hiring partner network right here. Let's start calling each one of these companies. So it's just little things like that that happen along the way. We're like, oh, this is amazing, and it's a sign we got to go for this. But we really just came in with the vision of we want to help people get jobs. And I think one of the things that, in my opinion, is still missing in education today is people love to educate, which is part of the process. But more important is, what is the ROI? Are people paying a price that makes sense for what you get on the other side from a vocational point of view? Are you going to get a job and a career? And that moment for coding was a perfect time to be doing that, because people were more than happy to pay originally $8,000, eventually $15,000 for 10 weeks because they were getting those jobs. And to prove it, we made a report that was one of the only independently verified reports in the world that showed an accountant would audit our stats and show that every one of these grads was really getting a job. How much were they getting paid? And it baffles me that education today does not do that. You should know what you're paying for.
Well, when I was looking into you guys,
All right.
I saw that you guys were placing, I think it was 90% of the graduates were getting jobs, and they were really good jobs, Boeing, Amex. So you are the real deal, not a Miami scam.
Our grads were all the real deal. They're the ones who did.
Yeah. The grads are amazing.
So what were some of the key inflection points that moved Wyncode from early stages to a scalable business?
Me? Yeah, I mean, I think first was, can we get people to enroll? Like that was our first big hurdle. And I still remember running the admissions team by myself because it was Joe and I, and admissions was on my side. And one of the things that I was doing was talking to anybody who was filling out an application form and seeing if they would enroll. And enrolling people in a school that doesn't exist is a lot harder than you think it is, especially in Miami teaching coding. And we finally got our first enrollment, the first person who said, I'm going to enroll. And I remember being so excited. I was in my mom's bedroom in Palm Beach on the phone. I'm like, wow, we got somebody. And they told me, you know what? I got to do the second cohort. I can't get into the first. And I was like, oh, no problem. You know, I'll take your payment. Really cool. We'll get it. And inside I was thinking like, there will never be a second cohort because we can't afford to stay open that long. Like if this guy signs up for number 2, there's nothing we can do. We're already paying rent. We had a head instructor. It was crazy.
Did you have brick and mortar at that time?
We had with a co-working space. The Lab Miami really believed in what we were doing, and we were a tenant of theirs from the early days. So it was really great. And they're back now in Wynwood, which is really cool. But basically, that's all we could think of is like, how do we get people in class? And luckily, the second person also signed up for cohort 2, and we're like, oh, we're dead. This is never going to work. Yeah. And then we ended up, I forget the number, we ended up at 10 or 15 in our first class, which is amazing. And then after, we're like, we'll never get these people jobs. Like 15 people, can there be that many coding jobs even in Miami? Yeah. And within 3 months, everybody was placed. And it was amazing. We're like, wow, this is going to work. So I think that was, for me, where it proved like there's a product market fit. People were willing to pay for this, and companies were willing to hire.
Excellent. And so when did you start thinking about this potential exit, and what triggered that shift?
Yeah, again, I would say like we never really thought about the exit, to be honest. I would definitely say like in the future, that's a big focus. And if anyone hasn't watched like Silicon Valley sitcom, it's absolutely fantastic. And it's all about the exit. It talks about the whole trajectory. I think for us, I'm really lucky that Juha as a co-founder is the kind of co-founder who says yes to every meeting. I say no to most more meetings than he does. And what started to happen is, even when you're talking about the inflection point, once we had proof, we started to have scale, and then we started to have momentum. That momentum carried over the years into, we actually saw a bunch of consolidation in coding bootcamp space. So, a bunch of our, I would say, competitors and collaborators were either coming together or being acquired. And so there was a fairly good amount of inbound, I would say. We were getting like, whether it was a business broker or a PE group at the time or an education roll-up. And for a period of, Juha would entertain those, see how legit they were. And so I think we had the fortune of like a few things coming our way. And then Juha would kind of suss out if it was legit. And then if it was serious, then I would like join the conversations. And so, I mean, you can definitely speak to when we really were like, oh, this is going to happen.
How far in were you?
I mean, this would have been probably, we raised strategic capital probably 4 years. 17. 5 years in, which was actually kind of a type of exit. So we raised some money for the business, sold part of the company to this group who wanted to expand to North America. So it was a Nordic group, and it was really cool because it gave us some capital to grow the business, but then things actually turned out to be a lot harder, and maybe the plan that we're looking at didn't exactly work out. So we ended up splitting ways with them, kind of buying that portion of the company back and being like, let's go for this again, and let's reinvent kind of what we're doing today to start again. I think one of the things I was noticing in the marketplace, like talking to our competitors a lot, and we were fortunate, Joe mentioned the White House thing, we got to kind of meet the top 10 other code schools that were invited from around the country. So we kind of made friends with a bunch of these guys. A lot of people were either like selling to big education groups or raising a lot of money. And I knew that eventually they would want to open in Miami, and we were self-funded. So I'm like, there's no way that we're going to be able to run millions of dollars of Google ads. Like, we're just going to lose at this game unless we go out and raise money, which we felt was going to be tough, or we looked to join a bigger group. So that was when these inbound inquiries were coming in, where, like Joe said, I try to say yes to every meeting because you're always learning something. And we ended up in a position where we had sort of 3 opportunities, and we were looking at the 3 to figure out what would make the most sense. It was definitely the right moment because it was right around COVID where we were able to pivot the entire company online. We were able to grow our class sizes to be bigger. We were able to draw students from across the country instead of having to come to Miami. So we were in a very strong position. It made a lot of sense to look at doing that. And I'm very happy that we did it at that moment.
Yeah, the best thing to do is to sell when you don't need to sell. So we, like, sometimes
nothing to lose. You're just
nothing
kind of
to
like, I'm going
lose.
to go all in and I'm going to say something ridiculous and let's see how it pans out.
And don't get me wrong, with business, they say that, you really have to have product market fit, obviously. But for some of these things, like having a successful acquisition and some things kind of really aligning, you need a little bit of luck. COVID really forced us to go online, which scaled the business even more.
Well, first it almost killed us.
First it almost killed us, but then it supercharged us, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then after doing that, we had this inbound. We entertained these conversations when we didn't need to. We weren't sure if we should sell because of the traction that we were having. At the same time, we were balancing that with the kind of what we were seeing in how competitive it was getting to acquire students. So came at the right time, and it all worked out. Kind of had a little bit of luck there for sure.
I agree. There's definitely some luck at play, but you two are very hardworking individuals, so don't sell yourselves short. I mean, I remember after you exited and sold the business, we were doing the kindergarten trunk or treat.
Trunk or treat, baby.
And Joe took a call in her car in her witch outfit for about an hour. And I was like, there's Superwoman right there. So we happened to all be out in LA during spring break and having dinner, and Juha mentioned that you did this sale without an investment banker. So I want to know how you approached valuation, diligence, and running a company at the same time. Is a huge thing.
That's a great question. I would say, first of all, very lucky to be co-founders because Joe was always the CEO of the company. So she was the one who was day-to-day running it, and that allowed me to step away and run the process. And I think at that time also we had launched a new division of the business called WinTalent, which was our staff augmentation and talent division. For people who are, a lot of them were our grads or instructors in our network that we could place with our hiring partners and kind of grow that relationship. So I had already kind of stepped away from the day-to-day of education to build that business. And as this started happening, you definitely need a lot of focus. So being able to focus on it, I remember the amount of times, we lived in the shores still, there was this little route around the block that I was walking at nights, just be on the phone, just working through due diligence and figuring things out. I'm like, when is this ever gonna end? And it was just the number of laps I did, I have no idea. You asked the question about doing it without a banker. I think that for me, if I think about it as a founder, there's no better salesperson for your business than the founder. And I think that if you're gonna outsource that job to somebody else, you better believe that they're better than you at that job. And I think there are, not to discount bankers, there are bankers that are better than me at that. People often say, oh, they do that every day and it's really great. I still think we knew our business better than anybody else and we were able to figure that out. The other thing that I learned in business school super early on was like, the way you're gonna get the best price is have multiple bidders. That's the way it works. Like, BATNA, what is your best alternative to negotiated agreement, right? That's like a thing that can work in everything in life. So it's like, let's find out how do we leverage these three parties that all want to buy us and figure out not just who's going to give us the best offer, but also who can actually close on that offer. Like which one of these companies is actually somebody who has the money, is able to close, will be a good spot for our team and our staff to move to afterwards, keep the name going potentially. Like these are all considerations we had to weigh and figure out what was the best option.
And then looking back, what do you wish you'd organized better earlier? I mean, so my partner, Mark Solomon, is always saying, make sure your house is in order before you go to market. And he stresses that, you know, if your books and records are a mess, if your corporate governance documents are a mess, it reflects so poorly on the company. So is there anything that you didn't do early on that you now learned from, or were you guys always just so great?
I don't know about that. I would say that, yeah, maybe I'll just really quickly. I have a friend who recently told me that I have an amazing ability to like deal with like admin garbage. So like just things that people need done, like whether it's emails or like share this file or get this information. Like in my mind, I'm like, I only have to do this once. So let me get this done properly and then it's there and I never have to hear about this again. For me, that's somehow motivating. So I'm like, oh, I'll just get all this together. I think we had all of our due diligence stuff. I don't remember there being any surprises like throughout the process. I also am very upfront and there were a couple of issues in the past of the company. I wanted to make sure that the acquirer, before we even got to that stage, knew about that happening and that we had addressed it. Here's what we had done and you're gonna see this. Nothing to worry about for this and this reason. I think that was really important. I think lessons learned, less so about the due diligence piece, more so about the actual agreement. When it came for us, a big learning was how accounts receivable was dealt with in the later stages of the acquisition. So without going into too much detail, there's kind of like a true up on receivables, which we actually didn't control anymore after the purchase, right. And the performance of those receivables dropped. And we found out too late that actually we were on the hook for that. And I was like completely surprised. My bad. I should have understood that from the agreement. And I hadn't. And it was a really big surprise. So I think it's like a clause that I had read 17 times during the process, but it had never clicked for me exactly what it meant. No,
it happens a lot, but it's something that you wouldn't just know. I mean, it's not a my bad, it's a very big thing and you would need advice, legal advice to kind of explain the legalese to you.
Yeah. There's a learning process.
Yeah,
for sure.
Certainly. There's always a learning process. We talked about, besides valuation, when you were selling the business, what mattered most. I know that Joe stayed on for much longer than you did and you wanted to get out. Not that you weren't very happy with the buyer, but I think you were ready to move on to your next venture.
Yeah, I think you talked about transparency. I think, and I love what, Mark, your boss said about having your house in order. Partner, I'm sorry.
I'm
Partner.
just kidding, I'm joking.
I think we were very fortunate to have our house in order. I think that gave the buyers a lot of confidence because there were no surprises for them as well. And we were also really forthcoming with things. And so, one, it was very fluid. I think it was super fluid. The other thing that we were upfront about is I think sometimes as founders, when you're selling, you're also figuring out like your new identity or what your next chapter is going to be. And Juha and I were pretty clear on that also from the beginning. So we didn't hide it for any of the three who were looking to acquire. Juha was upfront. You already had your next idea kind of that you were thinking about. And given my experience in corporate, I was happy to stay on. I wanted to like see it through. I felt because I was the most front facing with our team, I also felt an obligation, responsibility. And also I enjoyed our team a lot. I wanted to kind of like see and learn that side. I also thought how incredible to join the global leader in our space, join their executive team and see how they run things and how we fit into that puzzle. So I was really excited to do that. Everyone said no founder lasts on the whatever the earnout or the deal terms are. I had a wonderful time there for 3 years. I would say that we still have a great relationship with them. It's great to see them doing good things. And you knew what you wanted to do as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like you mentioned, valuation, definitely important. I think the other thing is just like the ability to close the deal, and Joe mentioned like BrainStation is the company that acquired us. Global leader in our space, amazing team, great stand-up ownership. Like, I think often as a founder, if I've talked to founders who've sold businesses, it does not work out the way it did for us. It was great. Everybody was happy with how things went through there. But I think the other thing I felt with them from the beginning is that they really wanted to make the deal work and they were going to make it happen. And I think I appreciated that a lot as a founder. It was really great. But I think in terms of staying, for me, my fear was kind of being able to operate in a new role, which I think, Joe, you can probably talk to more about because you went through it, but being in your own company that's no longer your company, in a role that's sort of like yours, that's not the same role with not the same decision making. So they obviously wanted one of us to stay on. Joe was really amazing to say you wanted to stay. I think also being the visible head of the company, it made a lot of sense. But I think normally it might be a lot more difficult, especially if you're a solo founder. You have to put that time in to help with the transition. So very grateful that I was able to kind of have a new experience after that with my startup.
Yeah, how'd it go when you told your employees and your key people? I mean, I know you have to kind of dance around and tell them at the exact right moment. I mean, were they nervous, and how did that go down?
Yeah, for sure. The team is always nervous. They want to know. Most people want to know, like, what does this mean for me? Are you staying? Are you going? So we were also happy to with full authenticity to say no, there's going to be continuity, and here's kind of what we envision. And it was a little tough because it was during COVID, so we didn't get to celebrate in the way that you would celebrate an acquisition. We did later a little bit, but it was a little, not quite the celebration we thought it would be, but still a celebration.
I'll take you guys out after and celebrate tonight.
I remember we went out with the boys. That was when we finally made the deal happen. But the other thing is something we do now is we coach a lot of founders and founders who are looking to exit their business. I think it is really key to figure out when is the right moment to integrate your leadership team, because you can't do this without them. You need their support, but you also need to understand that for somebody who is an employee of the business, it can be really scary. And it's very much an unknown. So what we decided, we do something called our level 10 meetings, which are our weekly meetings with our leadership team for really big things. When the moment was right, we're going to bring in this whole group and really explain to them why this is the best thing for the company, why this is also the best thing for them, and how it's going to take care of them. So it's really great. And on the employee side, when we did raise the strategic capital, we had something called equity appreciation rights in the business. And I do remember as one of my highlights and favorite moments of the entire journey was writing checks to the employees who got something out of it as well. And I think that was really amazing. And it's actually, when I think back, I didn't think that would be the most meaningful memory for me, but it actually is. It was such a
good.
I want to do it again. It makes me want to do it again.
You were with us, you helped us build this. I mean, as much as you guys did all the work, you couldn't do it without them. So
And we definitely didn't do all the work. They really did a lot of the work. And I think for me, at least as a founder, often you do make those promises. You're hey, believe in me, this is going to go somewhere. And I think often it's more than just you. It takes luck, it takes timing, all of these things. I've been on projects that haven't worked, so those promises didn't come true.
Right.
It's really cool when they do, and it's very, feeds me to do it again, for sure.
I know that this is kind of off topic, but you have the box car. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, this is another, because you're not busy enough. As co-CEO, you have something else going on.
Love multiple.
Yeah, I do. It's a problem I have, for sure. But one of my passions is cars, and my dad was a race car driver professionally growing up. So I was always in that world, but not really. He was don't do anything with cars, get a real job, and then became an entrepreneur, so it didn't work. I never had a real job. But it gave me the opportunity after the exit to get involved. And one of the things that I really have loved my entire life, going back to the floorball sporting goods business, is community. It's getting people together, like-minded people, and doing cool things. And cars is just a topic that is really fun to get folks together. So we have our club, which is a membership-based club. It started with a WhatsApp group of people to just watch F1 way before F1 was popular. That group's over 200 people in Miami now, and we get together for watch parties. We do rallies, we do cool events with everybody from influencers in the automotive space to people in F1 to professional drivers, we geek out on that stuff. And the one thing that's very different about our club is it's open to anybody. It's not you have to have a car, or it's about supercars. We love to have significant others and kids be involved with it. So just trying to make cars more inclusive and fun, which is really like also that it works with my life stage right now, is so I can include my kids in it and have a really fun time, and include Joe, who loves cars as well. So it's a lot of fun. Oh, boxbox.auto is the way you can join.
That's what we're getting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also in a super cool. And then a little bit about Mestari, which I know means champion in Finnish, so I know a little Finnish. When did you start that, and why?
Yeah, I think Juha and I have also been mentors, and also our Endeavor entrepreneurs. We were really proud to be selected in 2015, and that gave us access to a really powerful mentor and advisory network who actually played a big role in the acquisition and even in our lives today. We go to many of those advisors to be like, what do you think we should do? Through that, we started talking to other entrepreneurs who were like, what do you mean by having your house in order? What are the things that I need to do? And sometimes a banker, legal can help you with that. And then the other side of it is like, how do you go, as a founder, how do you go through this process? How did you guys do it? And so we naturally started coaching and helping facilitate other founders, like Juha mentioned, in terms of like preparing for exit. What does that mean? What needs to be in order? And so that's how Mestari was born. It does mean champion. And the reason we named it after that is, one, always great to have a play on our mother language of Finnish. But the other thing that we thought about is, throughout all of our founder experiences, it's so much about your attitude and mentality. And if you have this, like, if there's a will, there's a way. Basically what we feel is a champion mindset. You're gonna be successful. Persistence is a thing that wins all the time. The other thing that we feel deeply about founders and champions is like, you do the work when no one's watching. So of course everyone's there celebrating the acquisition, but man, did it take a team and a whole process and 8 years to get to that point. And so, we're big believers in that, and that's kind of how Mestari was born. We love working together, and so we do it all together. And I think that co-founder situations are very powerful, whether it is your significant other or a co-founder, but that's also a dynamic that, while for us it's uplifting and powers us, it can also be draining for others. So there are certain, we help people work through some of those dynamics as well. Like, how do you make it best possible with who your partners are?
Right. I mean, you guys are incredible partners together. Not just in the business, but in marriage. I mean, in life. I've known you for many, I guess like 6 years now. Great. And, I just invited Joe on the pod, and she's like, no, you has to come too. No shade to you.
That's my life.
I'm so happy that you're here, but it's
I get to come along sometimes.
Sometimes the husband-wife dynamic, it's tough. I don't know that I'd ever want to, I love my husband very much, but I don't know that I'd ever want to work with him. And you guys are just such a wonderful team. It's really great to watch you grow and see how you are with your relationships together and outside. I know that you guys are really big on relationships, and I think that that's propelled you forward. Thank you so much for coming on, giving me your time, driving across the bridge all the way down to Coral Gables.
Thank you for having us.
This has been great.
Love being
so
here.
Much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe and Juha, thank you both for sharing your experience so candidly. This has been such a valuable conversation, not just about building and selling a business, but about what it takes to do that in partnership and to do it well. For founders listening, one of the consistent themes here is that a successful exit doesn't start when a buyer shows up. It starts years earlier in how you build, structure, and operate your business. And to our listeners, if you're building a business with the goal of eventually exiting, or even just thinking about what that path could look like, this is exactly the kind of perspective that helps you get there more intentionally.